We had a tweet thread last week. That shit's blowing up. Talk to me about what is asymmetric opportunity and then why is it important?
The first tweet in the entire thread, the hook, the most important thing in anything. In the world today, you're fighting for attention.
On today's episode, we have Arjun Mahadevan.
You really stop caring what other people think, you become incredibly dangerous. I think it's for two reasons. One, you become dangerous because you yourself personally now, you've unleashed yourself. You're willing to do anything. There's no, oh, what does this person think? You'll do whatever you think's in your best interest. The second thing.
Obviously, you spoke about doing the rotational program at Dropbox, moving to San Francisco, then leaving your job at Dropbox to do your own business. And let's just go deeper with it. What's even giving you the courage? What's giving you the conviction? Take me back to that moment and what's happening in your life.
It all starts back with my family. My parents sacrificed and did so much just for my brothers and I. We help a lot of founders from around the world launch a US business. In my head, at least, I think that all of these people starting businesses, I kind of see my parents or family in them. And to me, that's why it physically hurts me when...
So I'm curious from your standpoint, what do you think stops people from taking their shot?
I've thought about this a ton because I go through it and I'm sure you do too. You don't get less scared, you get more brave. You'll feel the butterflies, you're gonna feel scared before sending the tweet, sending the email, sending the DM, approaching the girl, whatever it might be. I think that's a muscle, and the only way to build that muscle is by doing...
All right, welcome to the Callum Johnson Show. On today's episode, we have Arjun Mahadevan. Yeah, got that right. CEO, co-founder of Doula. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. Big fan. I was just saying earlier, I feel like I've been in this room before, and it's because I've watched some of those trailers you've been putting out. And I guess that's also the cool thing about podcasting is, even though we haven't met, you've seen some of my content, maybe some of the video stuff. I've definitely seen some of yours, and it feels like you can actually get to know the person before you meet them in person.
Yeah. It is actually such a cool thing about the medium. Because even listening to like some of the biggest podcasts, and people feel like they know them and they know all of these really intimate details that you would only really know if you're a close friend with someone. But just because you've been listening to their shit every week for an hour or whatever it is. Yeah,
I've run into friends since I started putting out way more content in the subway.
Yeah.
Which in New York feels crazy. It's such a big city, but I feel like anytime I'm out in the city, I run into someone I know.
Yeah.
And then I'll be in the subway, I run into them and they'll say, yo, I haven't seen you in so long, but it feels like I've been catching up with you because they've been watching the content, watching the videos.
Yeah.
And that's what podcasting, or even, I guess, video, it's the true form of video. I guess it isn't as effective with written communication, but with video, I've heard some people say that podcasting is like the printing press for the written voice.
Yeah.
Just an explosion of, hey, being able to record and put that video and people to consume that content from anywhere.
Yeah. I think I definitely, you know what it is? I feel like you just kind of have to find what your medium is. So I tried, and you know what's funny actually? So I'm pretty sure we didn't meet, but I'm pretty sure I came across you because this episode is brought to you by Free Agency. If you want to take your career to the next level, Free Agency is a company that you should check out. They manage and represent talent in the tech industry, and they provide you with a dedicated talent agent to help you find, engage, and win top of market roles that will maximize your earning potential. No more leaving money on the table. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency. Anyway, back to the show. Sean Puri. I did his power writing course, the first cohort. Yeah. And you were in it, right?
I was in that cohort.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was when I saw your faces on Twitter, I'm like, I've seen this guy.
Yeah, I guess that was my Slack avatar.
Yeah. And so initially I tried the writing route, trying to do the threads and stuff. And I even got some decent traction. Sean retweeted one of my tweets. One of the tweet threads that I did during the course.
Was your tweet thread the one where you something job related? You hustled your way into a job?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I need to go check now. I might have Slacked you or DM'd you after that.
Oh, really?
Wow, small world. I guess I completely forgot about that.
And writing is great. It's great if you can write. And I think one of the unique things actually when I was because I've been obviously following you and just looking at your content, I think the way that you're able to write in a way that is as powerful as someone speaking into a microphone and having a camera on them. Because it's not just the value of what you're saying. There's also a certain vulnerability to it. There's a certain, you're getting to know the person. You build in public very well, but it's actually more than building in public. It's you kind of just share things in a way that doesn't seem forced. But I still get the sense of like, oh, I'm getting to know this guy. So I think every medium has its own power, and it's more about like, does your skill set match that medium? So we're on the topic of content, which is great because that's where I wanted to start.
Yep.
You had a tweet thread last week. That shit's blowing up. Asymmetric opportunity. I was looking through the stats this morning. Because I actually remember when you first like tweeted it, and I think you actually responded also on one of my tweets, and like you linked to it, and I was like, and the gap between when you first tweeted it and when you responded on my tweet must have been like a day. And I looked on the numbers and I was like, oh shit, this is like blowing up. I looked this morning, it's like over 3 million views. I think over 16,000 likes. You're obviously talking about asymmetric opportunity. And I think one thing actually from everyone that we've got on the podcast, so like CEOs, entrepreneurs, people that are doing music, entertainers, I think they all understand asymmetric opportunity very well. They understand also leverage. Can you just talk to me about the tweet thread? Talk to me about what is asymmetric opportunity, and then like, why is it important?
Coming back to something you said, I actually think people say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think the way we're just wired, images, you can process more visual information from a photo. Written communication, though, is thinking, the ability to write and formulate your thoughts into words. So I actually think, pictures worth 1,000 words, and that video is worth 1,000 pictures. Video is always the most powerful.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean that the same piece of information, you should by default publish it via video or written text? That I don't know. But I actually do think that this thread, for example, the asymmetric opportunity, I actually believe if there's a way to do it in video format, and I think that takes the right style, it takes the right formatting, the right editing, it should have more reach and should be more impactful than text by default, just because it's a picture but stacked frame after frame after frame after frame. And I guess with that thread, what I've learned from that thread and other pieces of content, first of all, it is a concept which I think everyone natively can intuit or has felt before. Doing something and seeing more return. Not just gambling or, playing roulette or, flipping coins, etc. But a lot of the concepts in that thread were things I'd heard in the past. I think the first tweet in the entire thread, the hook, the most important thing in anything in the world today, you're fighting for attention end of day. And see your flood of information across the board. How are you going to capture someone's initial information or initial attention? So that very first tweet, concept I learned at 28 that I wish I learned at 18. Did I really learn it at 28? No. But right off the bat, it's like, okay, this is something which 10 years ago, this person wished they learned. Then this term, asymmetric opportunity, which I think, again, everyone realizes this. You realize that you're podcasting, anyone writing, doing a business, people have felt this concept before. And what I learned, and I sort of heard this directly from people, and that's the coolest thing about content, is they actually just tell you what they liked about it or what they didn't like about it. People said, this is something which I felt but couldn't fully articulate. And I think most of the time, I don't know if this is a hot take, I don't think most content that's out there is truly an original thought. Human beings, we've been around for a while, and I think the things we debate and think about now, cavemen were probably doing it. Maybe they weren't verbally saying it, they were drawing it or writing it. Yeah. But these concepts of the first tweet in the thread was going on first dates. A lot of people have gone on first dates and they realize, wait a second, crap, that's just a good way to put it. It's asymmetric upside. The date sucks, or like Sahil Bloom has this awesome story where he was giving a high five in the computer lab and that ended up being his wife. So first date sucks, you're embarrassed, or you get married. And a lot of other points, those are not new. The ideas of investing in startups, starting a company, building in public, creating content. Content's the original software. You put a video out, anyone can watch it. What works for you when you're done working. None of these are really new concepts. But what really resonated to people was the hook got their attention. There was a list of concepts, well formatted, broken out, articulated into things that they'd experienced. And what I also learned is that at the very end, and this is something which I've gotten better at as I write now, is at the very end, some sort of parting message or some aphorism or maxim to summarize everything you said. And what I said there, and in the moment, I'm not as engineered about this. It's just kind of what I'm thinking. But I wrote, and remember, life is too short or I said, and remember, shoot your shot. Life is too short not to do so.
Mm.
And that's just something I was thinking, but I put it in bold on LinkedIn and it was its own tweet on Twitter. And I think as people go through the full example and see that, they're like, whoa, that just hit me deep. And at the end of the day, I think content that goes viral, it's something you want to share. And Y Combinator, people will say, make something people want or make something people need. Oftentimes, make something people want to share or it's worth sharing. And at the end of the day, you go through this, it's like this person just articulated something I couldn't really feel. Boom, they hit me with this punchline at the end too. I want to go share that. And that was the feedback. A lot of people also did reply saying, damn, I'm sorry, bro. Like, you learned this when you were 28. I've known this for a while. So I'm thinking like, hey, joke's on you. Like, I did that a little bit on purpose. But end of day, like, I've read this thing called the Pixar story spine. And Pixar, I saw this too. Pixar owns some of the most valuable IP globally. Star Wars, Disney, Nemo's Finding Cars, and they do it over and over again, hit after hit after hit. And the story spine they talk through is that any story follows the same playbook. Once upon a time, every day, until finally, and because of that, and ever since then. And any story that we think of, whether it's a podcast episode that goes well, or a tweet thread, or even just a story you're telling about history, civilization, or your company, if it follows that arc, then people are going to be enthralled or then they'll be captured. And Pixar's done it. I'm starting to realize, like, in these stories, like, hey, if you can nail the hook, nail some valuable content with authenticity, I think a lot of content out there can be very dry, and you kind of have to cut through the noise too.
Yeah.
So there's no playbook. I've also realized sometimes there's content I put out, I'm like, this is going to blow up. Does not blow up.
Yeah.
And then other content, I'll put it out like Saturday morning before I go work out. Then I'll come back and it's like, holy shit, my group me's blowing up and notifications are blowing up too. So you don't really know, which comes back to the only thing you can control is your discipline. Are you consistent? And I also think, like, if you're just consistent enough and you iterate on what's out there, success is bound to happen.
Yeah.
You can't throw shit at the wall and hope it'll stick. At first, you're throwing shit against the wall, but if you stick through that and then iterate and see what works, success is bound to happen. It's just about staying in the game then.
Yeah. It's such I actually think that's such an interesting conversation of, like, even the debate of like, what's the most powerful medium? Because actually, I agree with what you're saying. I think that if you took, like, the most impactful like piece of video content, like, say I was just in my bag, like, I'm in my zone and I'm telling a story and it's, like, personal and it's, like, fluid, it's succinct, and I talk it into this camera and my eye contact and, like, everything is on point. And then, so, like, take that as, like, the best piece of video content. And then maybe you have, like, the best tweet thread and it's, like, succinct and it's concise and, like, it's formatted perfectly. In terms of the emotional, like, the impact on the consumer, you probably would say the video would hit more, just because it's, like, there's also a face to it. Whereas with written, it's just, like, words at the end of the day. Like, they can be perfectly written. Like, one of probably my favorite Twitter thread, the one that I always go back to, is Naval's How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky, which is, like, it's just and I've spoken about this with other guests, but, like, every word is, like, the perfect word that he's using. Like, no wasted space. Like, I think especially if you start to study writing, you're like, that is literally, like, perfect writing. It's, like, value. It's, like, clear. It's clear to understand. He doesn't use, like, jargon or words that are meant to, he doesn't overcomplicate it. It's perfect writing. But if he transferred that into video format and, like, delivered it to the same level of perfection, it probably would actually have a bigger impact. One of the things I think was so interesting, and I love that you brought up even the final tweet in that tweet thread about, like, shooting your shot, and also just, like, the relatability of the thread. Like, everyone's done things which have had, like a really high upside, and they've won from it. Whether that was, like, I don't know, asking some girl out, or, like, starting a business, or sending in, like, one job application. Like, everyone's had that experience, but yet we are all so hesitant to do the things that have that opportunity, that upside. Which, just thinking purely logically, like purely rationally, it makes no sense. It's like I've already won from doing this thing, but I'm still scared to do it every time. So I'm curious from your standpoint. Everyone's kind of aware of asymmetric opportunity, of the upside. What do you think stops people from taking their shot?
I've thought about this a ton because I go through it, and I'm sure you do too. And I've heard from other people with way bigger audiences, even people who are speaking on way larger stages, quite literally. I don't think you ever get less scared. I think you have the same butterflies. Even Eminem, like the movie 8 Mile, he was still throwing up before going out and doing his freestyles. And even the biggest speakers, they still get the butterflies. You don't get less scared, you get more brave. And I think that's the same way to say the same thing, but it's a different flip because you'll feel the butterflies. You're going to feel scared before sending the tweet, sending the email, sending the DM, approaching the girl, whatever it might be. But you just do it anyway. And I think that's a muscle that you build. And the only way to build that muscle is by doing it more. So overall, even every day, I'm hyper consistent now, but there's days I wake up and I'm like, crap, I don't want to publish this thing, or I'll draft the tweet and I'll delete it and I'll save it as a draft. But now I say, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to post it. And same fear is there. Even now after, hey, I'm following a format of something which worked well, the same butterfly, same fear is there, but I'm way more brave. And I think you have to keep fighting that demon inside of you. And the only way you do that is by casting those bets or taking those shots to reinforce to yourself that's who you are. And end of day, I show this every time. I knew I was going to bring this up. My favorite book all time, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And I think the most powerful concept in that book, there's many, is that end of day, your identity and who you are is the sum of your habits. Let's say you're a skier. What does that mean you're a skier? It means you've gone skiing. How many times have you gone skiing? If you go once, you're not a skier. If you go twice, maybe you're dabbling. If you go 3 times, okay, like you ski a little. But if you go skiing every winter, every Martin Luther King Day, and then for the month of October, you go ski 30 times in a month, you've taken those bets, or you've taken the signs or actions to show yourself that you're a skier. So are you a content creator? If you post 1 tweet, no. If you do 4, like, okay, you've tried. But if you do it every single day, you've reaffirmed that to yourself. So why don't people do it? I think, one, it's scary. The butterflies are always there. I think you have to be or make yourself more brave, which is the muscle. But I also think the other part of it too is that it's cringe. Like, it feels shameless. It feels cringy. And that isn't natural. Or let me put it this way. It's natural to feel that. And I think that goes back to end of day, humans were social animals. We want to fit in. And doing those things where, what are people going to think about us? It feels cringy. We have those natural reactions because if someone doesn't like it, then you don't fit into the group. But I think what I've realized more than ever is like leaning into that. Now when I feel that this is going to be cringe, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going down the right path here.
Yeah.
And I think a prerequisite to success in anything is you have to be shameless.
Yeah.
And that's uncomfortable because in the shameless period, you're shameless. People are going to say, what are you doing? And then you come out of this on the other side and you're like, whoa, it worked. And then like they conveniently forget they said all those things. And you'll forget too. But you know, the overnight success is the tip of the iceberg. There's the cringe, the shamelessness, the drafting the tweet, not sending it, etc. And the other thing here, which I've thought a ton about, I actually put a thread on this out, and this one blew up too, was working hard is extremely risky. I found a video. It was a video of Tiger Woods. I think he was accepting his Hall of Fame nomination or accepting some awards. And in the video, he says, it's all about hard work. Nothing is given to you. You have to earn it. And if you don't get it, it's because you didn't work hard enough. You just didn't put in the work and didn't earn it. And in this story, what it says is hard work is extremely risky because not working hard is a form of self-protection. And what that means is if you work incredibly hard and the thing you're working on doesn't work, that's scary psychologically because you put so much into it and it didn't work. But if you don't work hard, if you hedge and say, I'm going to try this, if it doesn't work, you can always tell yourself, oh, it's because I didn't really work hard. So it's a form of self-protection. The same concept applies. And you probably know friends or like even back in school, I used to know people who say, oh, I didn't study for the test, and they'd go in and get an A. I didn't really try that hard and got the A. But then there's other people who will prep for a full month. They'll go through every test. They'll study diligently the week before. They're still up the whole night before studying. And then they go into the test. And if you go into that test and you fail after that, it's because you're stupid or you
Yeah.
didn't study well. And that's
Yeah.
scary. And it's the same thing as in college or in school. If you go out the night before the test and you get drunk and go take the test and fail, you failed because you got drunk. But if you were studying and went in and didn't pass the test, you failed because you're stupid or not smart or didn't study correctly. And that's the ultimate sin for a student. So I think that same thing can apply to so many other things. Going all in on something is the scariest thing. It's psychologically not safe because you can't point the finger anywhere else but yourself. But it comes back to leverage or the asymmetric opportunity, where if you don't put that effort in, you're not going to truly get the highest upside. Then the final thing here is, okay, so why don't people work hard when it's in their best interest to do so? Or take these asymmetric bets when it's in their best interest to do so? And I think it comes down to, again, there's this innate fear around it, but it's that self-protection. And to me, and I'm not perfect at this, I fight this every day, but the thing which flipped in my head was we've all felt regret. And that is what eats you. I have regret for such small things. 8th grade basketball, tie game, I got fouled. We pulled a comeback in the 4th, and I missed both free throws. And we ended up winning in overtime, but I go back to them like, crap, why didn't I just practice free throws more? Or high school soccer, playoffs, like corner kick comes in, just missed the header. Crap, my brother and I were doing corner kicks. Like, why didn't we just drill it a couple more times? Those are such small things, and there's definitely bigger ones in life. But that regret to me hurts and eats so much more. So at this point, something I've really flipped in my head or tried to is the hard work now, the discipline, that sucks at times. You're not going to feel motivated all the time. But I know if I don't fire the shots now, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, 60 years from now, it's going to eat at me. And if I can flip that and really fast forward and think back, it makes it easier for me to do those things. I'm not perfect at it, though. It's hard. I think every day you have to keep fighting those demons and taking that bet every day to show yourself that you can be brave and then grow that muscle.
Yeah. I think it's so smart what you said, which is like, it's a muscle.
Even willpower. I think willpower is a muscle too.
Yeah.
So many things you can build, and whether it's literally physical muscle at the gym or frameworks or the way you apply yourself to things too. I think they're all muscles at the end of the day.
Yeah. And when you say it's a muscle, like what comes to mind for me, it's a lot about people underestimate the power of momentum. Like a lot of the times the reason, like even with podcasting, I get people now that reach out to me. They're like, oh, I want to start a podcast, but I'm not like, I went home a few weeks ago to London and someone said this to me. They're like, oh, I want to start a podcast, but he was like, I don't quite have your mindset yet. Like I'm not that confident yet. And I was listening to her and I said to him, I was like, well, I think I do have a certain level of confidence to do this, but it's not that I have this like miraculous confidence just to come up here and do this. It's like, and I said this to him, I was like, I was scared shitless every time.
Yep.
The story of when, like literally, like I'm pretty composed for the most part, but when I'd actually scheduled my first episode, because you have to do it, I use Anchor. So you do it like in the back end and you schedule it. And I scheduled it on Monday. It was coming out on, I think like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And I could not sleep. Like I was so nervous. And then I went back, unscheduled it, started revising the episode a bit. Like I was scared shitless. But there's a certain, there's a power in being scared and stepping forward anyway. And once you do it once, I think when you do it once, it's still an isolated event. But then once you do it twice, and this is why I love the example that you gave, which is like, okay, if I release 2 podcast episodes, am I a podcaster? Not really. If I release 3, I'm still not really a podcast. If I release 10, it's like, okay, people are starting to be like, this guy kind of does this shit. When I release 20, it's like, he's kind of done like a full season. Like he's done a season. When I release 30, now I'm kind of into it, like 40, 50, and it just keeps stacking. And I think the problem is that people want the identity before the momentum. The identity only comes when you've started doing it, and then you're building the momentum. And then as the momentum is building, and as you're putting out more and more and more, there's a certain point in your mind when you're like, and for me, it was only very recently because I left my job to do it. And that was when, and it wasn't even when I handed in my notice, it was when I'd actually left and I was here in this studio recording. I was like, oh, like this is my shit. Like this is what I do now. but you can't short circuit that process. You're not going to have that feeling. You're not going to have the feeling of having done 50 episodes of podcasting and having that comfort of being like, okay, I do this, when you haven't released anything. And I think sometimes it's that gap in between, which is deeply uncomfortable. And I'm sure you felt it with your content, even what you're doing with your business, where it's like you're trying to do all the right things, but you're not really that person yet, at least in your own mind. Like even the title of CEO, there's so much that comes with that. Co-founder, CEO, like founder, raising money. Like there's so much mentally, like there's a pressure that comes with that title. Like it's a responsibility. And you're not going to feel, or like most people at least, are not going to feel like they fully fit those shoes until they've done a whole bunch of work. And I remember Alex Hormozy says this, which is like, the only way to overcome self-doubt is to build an undeniable stack of evidence, hard evidence, like in the field doing the thing. And then he says, you have to outwork your self-doubt. That's the only way. You know what? Let's talk about that. Your origins as an entrepreneur. Like, where did that start?
It's exactly what you said. You're not born that. Maybe you have certain traits, or your environment growing up is obviously important too. But what you said is spot on. You can't get the identity before you take the actions. Fill up drops in the bucket, then one day the bucket's full of, hey, I'm a skier, I'm a podcaster, I'm a content creator, I'm a CEO, I'm a founder, or I'm an entrepreneur. But I think that goes back to everyone is making it up as they go. I've realized that I'm making it up as I go. You aren't a founder until you've founded a company. What does it mean to found a company? You start and then it's a grind. You're doing things. At some point, I guess you flick the switch and you become a podcaster. When is that? If you stop putting out podcasts, you stop becoming a podcaster. So then you realize there's no pause. You're consistently going too. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, the first thing I can remember is when I was back in middle school. I grew up in Boston, and it snowed a ton there. And when it would snow, my brothers and I would shovel our driveway, and then there were other driveways down the street. And hey, like if we do that again for this driveway, then people will pay us. Then you just do more. Didn't even make a big business out of it. But the next thing, it's like you look forward on the calendar to the next snow date. And then you go proactively to those neighbors and say, hey, I'm coming. I'm ready this week. Can I come? What's the rate? Great. Would love to do it. And then the next step is my parents bought a snowblowing machine. So it's like, hey, Dad, can we use it? How much was the gas? Can we compensate for gas? Cool. Now we're taking the snowblower out to neighbors' houses too and able to do more shoveling. So that was my first taste of business. But I won't sit here and say like, oh, the second I started, it wasn't even a legit snow shoveling business, that I've been thinking about starting business since then. After that, it's always been fun to, I think about starting a business. And this is where I think the people you surround yourself with is the single most important thing. A theorem or something I come back to, and I actually first heard this from Naval Ravikant, it's the 5 chimps theorem, which is if you're in the zoo and you take any 5 chimps that are hanging out, you can predict the behavior of any of those chimps by looking at the other 4. Highly accurate, 95% plus. And who you spend time with in this day and age, which could be in a group chat, who you live with, who you're physically surrounded by, single most important thing. And it makes sense. At the end of the day, any ideas you have or what you do is downstream of your inputs. And what are inputs? It's what you read, it's what you see, it's what the people around you. So without even realizing it, if you're digesting shit or whatever it is, crappy content or wrong people around you, that's going to translate to who you are. And where this comes back to your question on entrepreneurship, I went to University of Pennsylvania. I studied mathematics and statistics there. Around me in the business school, the Wharton Business School, so many people go into finance. You see all those people, very smart people, going into finance. You think, wait, I should probably do it too. You don't really know what finance is. I read a book on sales and trading. I thought, it's kind of like gambling. Sounds fun. Quantitative, fast-paced. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Went there for the internship. And during the internship, I realized these tech stocks, whatever it is, I can't get my head out these tech companies. Like, I just want to go after these tech companies. I was pitching to tech companies. We had this stock trading challenge. I only invested in tech stocks. I bet on the Bank of Greece, it went to 0, and then I had to pull a comeback, but it was only through tech stocks. And then halfway through that summer, I realized analyzing the stock price is cool, but I want to influence that stock price. What are these products that they're launching, initiatives, marketing campaigns, etc.? And that's when I realized, okay, West Coast. That's where these tech companies are. I want to go work at a tech company. Was blessed. Dropbox had this rotational program for non-technical undergrads, which was me. First time in SF was for the job interview. Second time was day one on the job. And when you're in San Francisco, I don't know if you've spent time there personally. San Francisco, no matter where you go, the whispers in the city when you're walking down the street, if you're at a party, at work, it's tech all around you. Every day on my walk to work, past the Twitter office, Uber office, on my block was Brandon Street was Dropbox, Pinterest, Airbnb. You're seeing it every day. You see friends quitting, people quitting, starting companies. And when you're surrounded by that, you can't help but think, wait a second, I can do that. And then you see people who are your age, like you, going and doing it too. And that environment, I think, is so critical. Without that, I don't think I would have eventually decided, hey, I want to go try this. And even then, the idea I first tried was the same idea I wrote when I was applying to Dropbox. They asked a question saying, hey, during Hack Week, what would you want to build? And I had this idea for this fitness app. I don't know if you use Strava or if you run, but it was Strava, but for working out. Hey, I want to go work out with a friend, play basketball, lift weights. I wrote that idea. Eventually at Dropbox, I thought, I just have to go try building this. I left, decided to build it. And it's actually really funny what you said when you were about to release your first podcast, how I guess you had it scheduled or was about to go out, then you stopped it and you made edits. I left Dropbox, went off the cliff. I was like, I'm working on this thing. Was working on this no-code fitness app. I couldn't write code, so it was no code. Every week I kept delaying it, coming up with a new reason not to ship it. And shipping this was just doing a tweet thread on the thing with a big blog post. Kept finding excuses. One weekend, I had a Medium post and a Twitter thread. Drafted the full post. It was called Penvy, I called it Instagram and ClassPass for Friends. Drafted the post, had the Twitter thread ready. Then I accidentally on Medium scheduled the post. And the issue was, I say accidentally because next morning came around and I was like, I'm not ready. And I went to go try to unschedule it, too late. It had been posted.
Oh, fuck.
And if that hadn't have happened, I would have pushed it out again.
Yeah.
But once the Medium post went live, I said, okay, it's time to ship it. Twitter thread went live. At the time, it blew up for my standards back then. Yeah. But what's crazy is, as a result of that tweet thread, an angel investor reached out, not to invest. And he was right. The idea was a bad idea. It was a sitcom idea. But he reached out, and this is classic SF fashion. He said, hey, let's get coffee. You seem interesting, seem smart. I liked your Twitter thread. We met, got coffee, didn't talk for a few months. A few months later, he said, hey, I know this solo founder. He's technical. He can design. He can build. He's looking for a business partner. He has this app which has some revenue. Think you two should meet. We met. Fast forward 2.5 years to today, the company's doula. Yeah. And that to me is insane, where if it wasn't for that scheduled post on Medium, maybe I'm still at a company. Maybe I'm not, actually shipping things, but being surrounded by different people. And it's so funny. I'm sure everyone has a similar story like that. The first post, your first podcast, like my first blog post there. Yeah. Everyone goes through it. And then now that feels so silly to me. Yeah. Now it's like, no, I'm posting this because I know it's more cringe and I know it's going to drive more eyeballs. But it's just funny looking back and seeing, wow, the only way you call yourself an entrepreneur is by taking the actions. And then one day you're like, I'm an entrepreneur, but you can't hit pause. You got to keep going. Yeah.
You know what's, I love that story. You know what's so crazy is, it is stupid. Like and I have the same thing in hindsight. I'm like, why was it such a big deal? And you know what's actually funny as well? I saw a post from Sahil Bloom this morning. He was talking about the spotlight effect and the fact that like no one actually cares about what you're putting out. So like when you feel, but the funny thing is like when you're doing it, it is the feeling of fear is so strong. Like it feels like you're stepping out in front of the whole world and they're like judging this thing, which is like hugely meaningful to you. You feel so like vulnerable. But in reality, like no one cares. And even the people that do kind of care or are like, oh, this is cringe, they think that for a second and then move on.
Yep.
Like, but in your mind, I remember when I scheduled this thing, it was, I would sleep, but I would think about it in my sleep. Like it was crazy. Just the level of fear. And it's funny as well, because I have a very like vivid, it reminds me, so in school back home, we call it like assembly. I'm sure you guys have something similar, which is like they kind of they gather like all the students and they're almost like making an announcement.
Yep.
Or they're like explaining something or whatever. And we used to have it like every week or like every 2 weeks. And usually at the end, when they're like finished, and I don't know, you might have like 100 students in the room, and they'll be like, does anyone have any questions? And you might have a legitimate question and be like, I actually kind of do need to know this. But you're looking around and like no one's putting their hand up. You're like, fuck. Bro, I'm not asking it. I'll pull the teacher like another time or some shit. Because I'm not putting my hand up. And I remember we had this one guy in our year. He always had a question. He did not give a fuck. Like he would always put his hand up. And it became kind of like a jokey thing because he would always put his hand up. But that is the feeling. Like it's just so hard to, we just want to fit in. And I think life really changes when you stop trying to fit in and you start standing out for the things that you're meant to stand out for. I'm not saying just do some wild shit. But,
it's so true.
Yeah.
I actually, now what I do, and I guess I have to hold myself to this now, when I go to events like that, if there's a mic, I say, time to fight this demon. Like, I'm going to go up there and ask a question. And I did it. There was this event which Ankur Nagpal did.
Okay.
And he was talking about his story. They had the mic. And I was there and like it was getting towards the end. I was like in my head thinking, crap, I don't really want to go up there and ask a question, but I do have a question. I wanted to ask his favorite interview questions. He talked about hiring. Then eventually I said, crap, I'm just going to go do this. And I got up there and then shamelessly, stone cold to start, I just turned and faced the audience and pitched the company, did my 30-second blurb. And then he even joked, did you just come up here to pitch the company? Then I asked the question, but didn't want to do it, did it anyway. And now took another identity or took another bet to show myself, like you are willing to put yourself out there. You are willing to go say those things. And I totally agree. I saw the exact same post. That's the power of content. I saw the exact same post from Sale, and we overestimate how much others think of us. And when you stop caring about what others think, I first heard this from David Goggins. Have you read any of his books?
Yeah. I haven't read his book, but I've watched his interviews.
Knowing you, I think you'd like his books.
Yeah.
Videos, see, the video is powerful, but he has this video or line where he says, when you really stop caring what other people think, you become incredibly dangerous. And I think it's so true. And I think it's for two reasons. One, you become dangerous because you yourself personally now, you've unleashed yourself. You're willing to do anything, maybe even some wild shit for the sake of doing wild shit. But now there's no filter. There's no, what does this person think? You'll do whatever you think's in your best interest. The second thing, which I think makes you dangerous, is it's scary for other people. And I don't know if this is a dark truth about society or it's a natural thing, but it's incredibly scary for other people. I think it's a source of anxiety when you see other people shamelessly, unabashedly going after their goals or going after something, because you yourself are thinking, crap, why aren't I doing that? What's stopping me from doing that? And that's scary too for the other people. And I'm sure you've seen this all the time too. When you talk about goals or, hey, I want to get in shape, or I'm going to try this diet, or I'm going to do this thing and start a podcast or whatever, everyone's supportive. Hell yeah, go for it. Oh yeah, you can go do this X, Y, Z. But once you start, out of the woodwork, anyone will come up with any reason to come up with excuses or doubts. I've seen this too, like two examples for me. I actually, when I started putting out content, I announced this challenge, whatever. Everyone's like, oh, amazing, like good stuff. Then you start getting texts like, yo, I think you should tone it back a bit. Or, dude, that was weird. Why did you post that? And these are from people you thought were supportive. They were the same people being supportive at first. And it's scary because, like, crap, you realize no one should truly just shamelessly support you. But you realize, crap, maybe this person, is it self-doubt? Is it self-consciousness? Or is it just natural where you're doing this thing and they're feeling that insecurity? He has this other line, which is, even if you could walk on water, someone would say it's because you can't swim. And to me, that's what I think about all the time. It's so true. No matter what you do. I got really into health and fitness when I was in San Francisco. Even signed up for my first bodybuilding show in October later this year.
Sick.
Now people are telling me, yo, like, should you really be taking creatine? Like, oh, yo, you spend too much time in the gym. Why don't you do something outside of the gym? Literally any excuse. Every day, I say every day or hour I'm in the gym is an hour or day less in the hospital when I'm older. So many benefits from doing it versus not doing it. But no matter what you do, someone's going to come up with some reason or excuse that you shouldn't do it. And yeah, I don't know if that's just society. It happens. I come back to this analogy or story of, if you take a bucket of crabs and one crab tries to climb out of the bucket, the other crabs will actually drag it down and try to break its leg. And that's pretty morbid or fucked up, however you want to describe it. But the truth is they don't want that crab to escape. And I think in some signs, I actually think, and maybe this is for the worst in some cases, I genuinely default believe people are good, default positive, default want the best.
Yeah.
And you can get taken advantage of or screwed for that. But to me, like, why live the other way where you're constantly on edge? And you absolutely can get taken advantage of. So I don't think it's natural that people want others to fail. But I think, again, it's really scary when someone's like, I'm going to go start a podcast. And then, holy shit, they did it 20 times in a row. And now they're like shooting their shot and getting other guests on.
Yeah.
Holy crap, they said they're going to do this thing. They did it. Why aren't I doing that for XYZ? And everyone has that XYZ too.
Yeah. You know what it is? It's like, and it's such a good point. I think you really have to like build your mentality for this sort of thing. Like because I see it online a lot. Creators who, and I'm sure I'll get to this point. And sometimes I'm sure it's also like the volume of people like hating that kind of gets to people. But I feel like I've brainwashed myself where like I kind of like it. Because people only hate on shit that's good. Like, and that's the thing, you kind of see how things change, right? So like when you make the bold move and you do the thing, everyone is cheering you on. Because they're like, yeah, that idiot just went in there and he's doing his thing. We'll see how that goes. We'll see him. And then it's what you're saying, right? It's like, oh, wait, he got like a big time guest. It's like, oh, it's a fluke.
Yep.
He just did that one time. Like anyone could get lucky, right? Yep. Oh, he got another one. Fuck. And then it's like you keep stacking it. And you have to think, the point in the journey when people are, what you're doing is getting them so mad that they're actually like, have enough energy to like comment or like send you a text, or like you're actually pretty far along the path.
Oh yeah.
Like people have to care. They have to be like, oh fuck, this guy's actually going to do this shit. Like someone needs to stop this. Like someone needs to put an end. And
I think this too. And they're engaging with your content at the end of the day by doing it.
Yeah.
Like actually today, I'm testing different formats, etc. I have this whole thread on Twitter now where I say, if your post doesn't make it to the group chat, it doesn't have a high enough K factor. Like if someone's taking the time to copy your post or content, put it in the group chat and comment on it. Yeah. One, they're engaging with your post, like jokes on them, I guess. But then two, it was worth sharing or worth commenting on. And then today, one of my friends, really good friend, he comments, he goes, on my thread I just did, he's like, these are the stupidest threads on Twitter. I screenshotted it. I tweeted about saying, hey, if your post doesn't make the group chat, it's not cringe enough or doesn't have enough K factor, tweet it and send it back into the group chat. So again, this is all in good jest. Like that's what friends are for there.
Yeah.
But end of day, again, I think it comes back to, it's scary for people to see, damn, like he landed that guest and then he did it again and he did it again. And you kind of called your shot, right? You said, I'm going to go do this thing. And then you did it. And that's the thing. Like, do those people not want you to succeed? My default thought is it's not maybe that, but it's like just scary to see someone go do that. But end of the day, they're engaging with you, and it's because you've gotten to that point where you've been consistent enough or disciplined enough. Yeah. And it's not going to go away. You're totally right. If anything, that pie is only going to get bigger. There's going to be more and more people.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I guess at that point, you have to tune out the noise. But it comes back to, again, you become dangerous when you just really stop caring what other people think. Yeah. But I think also it's important to like have your circle of people. Like you should take feedback. I heard this incredible quote from I think it's from Michael Jordan's, or it was from Nick Saban. Let's see if I can remember this. He said, good people, good athletes or people want feedback. Great people seek it out. Exceptional people want the truth. And the difference there is like, apparently Michael Jordan, he was a sponge. He would proactively go out and people like, tell me where I suck, tell me where I suck, tell me where I suck. Versus just saying, hey, I'm open to feedback. So I think feedback's critical, but the scary or hard thing is, who do you take that from? At least for me now, it's other people in a similar boat, other founders, it's other creators, etc. It's kind of like, are you in the arena or not? It's easy to be a critic, just like watching and chirping, but if you're out there, ultimate respect. Like even just going to the gym, like anyone who's in there in the gym trying, ultimate respect, doesn't matter where you're starting. Anyone who's deciding I want to create content, who cares where you're starting? Like you're actually in the arena. So I think that cliff for me is, hey, like you're out here doing it in different medium. I don't have a podcast, but we just talked about so many things where there's overlap, like the fear of that first post. So if that person's in the arena, then that feedback, sure. And other people who are at the level, whether they're founders or people in different industries or markets that you want to get to at some point too. But it's tough. Like, how do you know, or who do you know when to not take feedback versus take it from someone too?
You know, I love the Goggins stuff. And one of the things I think that really resonates with Goggins is even with his running or like his training or endurance or these races that he does, he's all in. Like there's a power in being all in. And he even has this thing, he calls it the 40% rule, which is like, whenever you think that you're exhausted, you know what, let me give an example actually. A personal example, very recent. So I watched Creed 3 recently. And I have this thing, whenever I've watched all the Creed films, whenever I watch the film, I'm like, okay, I'm doing the boxing thing. I'm going to do this. Like I get inspired. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this shit. So I signed up to like this boxing class at my gym. And I did the first session last Sunday. And 15 minutes in, and it's like this small woman that teaches it, Caribbean woman, like very passionate, like shouting at you sort of thing. 15 minutes in, and I like work out, like I go to the gym like 3-4 times a week. Like I think I'm in like decent shape. 15 minutes in, completely gassed, finished. Like, you know, when you're doing exercise and like your muscle physically feels like it cannot do more. And Goggins has this thing, he calls it the 40% rule, which is like when you're exhausted, you're actually only 40% done. You don't even get close. You're not even remotely close to 100% done. It's all in your mind. And the example he gives, he's like, say that you tore your hamstring, right? So you tore your hamstring, let's say on Tuesday. It comes around to Friday. You're sitting in your house. You're lying down, resting, recuperating. Your family's like all in the house with you. Suddenly a fire goes off in the apartment. And like, you need to get people out. It doesn't matter that your hamstring is torn. You're going to grab your daughter. You're going to grab your son. You're going to grab your mom, your girlfriend, whatever it is. And you're going to run and like sprint out of that house. Even though physically speaking, your hamstring is torn, you should not be able to run. And that's what he's saying is the gap is like, you just haven't gotten to a mental place yet where you're unleashed. Like you still have the handbrake on. And I've realized like we all have this in different areas of our life, right? Like even the highest performing individuals, maybe the handbrake is off if you're Michael Jordan, maybe the handbrake is off in basketball, but there might be another aspect of his life where he's still not fully going for it because it's tough. Like, as you even said at the start of the episode, mentally, it's really difficult to fully throw yourself into something. Physically, it's like, it feels impossible to do it. But when you take that handbrake off, and I think it's also part of it is that not many people do it in any arena, in any facet of their life. It's crazy the opportunities that start to come. And also, I just think, you know what's funny? I feel like other people who are like, they've taken the handbrake off, they can like feel it off you. They can just look at you and be like, oh, this guy. Like, it's almost like the Russell Westbrook thing in basketball. It's like the guy, like I'm a Lakers fan, so I've been watching him the last 2 years. It's been tough.
Shit, I'm a Celtics fan.
That's funny, actually. I'll try not to let that affect this conversation. But yeah, like he makes a lot of mistakes, but every athlete, every player in the league respects this guy because they know every game, the 482, the whole postseason, he is coming at your head. He is coming with the handbrake off. Like he's going at it. And the right people, you spoke about building your circle, the right people like really fucking respect that. And just the energy, it's not even truly about what you're doing. It's just the energy of someone that's going for it. And I think to your point, like it really just comes down to like, and I talk to myself about this, like, what are you optimizing for? Like what kind of life do you want? Like, do you want the kind of life where it was like it was okay, like it was fine? Or do you want something which is like, I just went after exactly what I wanted. And I don't know, maybe it didn't even pan out, but there's a certain like honor in that of like, I just put it all out there. Like I left it all on the field. Like it was done. I think even Kobe said that. He was like, yeah, like I don't really miss playing basketball. He said this after he retired. He's like, I don't miss playing basketball because I left it all there. Like I don't think to myself, could I have trained harder and maybe I would have won one more ring? He's like, nah, I put it all on the court. Like what I achieved was my ceiling. And I just think there's just honor in being able to say that.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think this is where sometimes it gets into that woosai, I'm usually skeptical of that stuff, but I do think you are what you put out there and people feed off of it. They can feel that energy. Again, it's maybe a bit intimidating. It's a bit formidable, but
yeah,
when someone's just out there, putting themselves out there, saying they'll do it and then they do it, it's execution at the end of the day. It comes back to like casting these, filling the bucket with drops or whatever it is. But that is formidable. That's energizing. And that attracts people too. That attracts other people to you. And that's where I think it is kind of self-perpetuating, where if you decide you're going to go all in on something and really do it, part of that decision and the actions you take make it more likely that whatever you're doing is going to work now, because you're starting to attract those people. And then when you attract those people, you're putting yourself out there more, the asymmetric upside, whatever it is, it's more likely you'll get lucky. And another thing I say is I think, yes, luck is part of anything in life, but you can manufacture your own luck. That's what asymmetric opportunity is. That's when putting yourself out there. Closed mouths don't get fed. You have to just put yourself out there. And the only way to do that is build that muscle again. And the other thing too, coming back to what you said around the 40% rule, love that. It's one of my favorite parts from the book. How do you get past the 40%? Oftentimes it takes the fire, literally that extreme situation of a fire in your house with a broken hamstring or torn hamstring. And you go out the house and you think, holy crap, I didn't move for 3 days and I just got up on a broken hamstring. But how does that actually happen? I guess it's extreme situations. And in Goggins' case, I guess it was his Navy SEAL recruiters, those people who pushed him. And he's an animal on 2 broken kneecaps. He didn't know how to swim. He did all these things and made it through. Went through buds 3 times. But in other things in life, I think it really is about having someone push you through that moment. And then eventually just forcing yourself to do it too. It's all that self-talk in your head. And there's always that voice saying, oh, you're too tired or you can't do it as well. And it reminds me of this thing I just saw. I'm actually going to put something out on this soon, but a little sneak peek. Former Navy SEAL. It's called Don't Be Afraid of the Circus. And he talks about in the SEALs, anytime you were late or you missed a time on something, etc., there was this thing called the Circus, which was 2 extra hours of calisthenics or training at the end of the day. It meant you weren't good enough. It meant you weren't up to par. You would dread it. It's 2 extra hours of work. And then now the next day you have to go do everything. So you're going to be more tired, etc. But slowly he realized and others realized everyone who went to the circus got in better shape. They became more resilient. Yeah, they were a little more tired that first day, but then they started to outpace everyone else. They started to win in other areas. They became stronger, more confident, tougher. And then they started to embrace the circus in a weird way. And Goggins talks about this too. When they were lifting the boats up and down, etc., he started laughing, smiling, making a good time of it. What they ended up doing was pulling him out and made him watch other people, and that hurt more. So he completely flipped his brain and said, kind of in this diabolical way, like, I'm going to find joy out of this. I'm not going to be afraid of the circus. I'm going to go do this thing.
Yeah.
And then how do we just do that for ourselves? You're right. You just have to push yourself and realize that whether it's the 40% rule or anytime you think you're tired, you can always do a little more. People can push you or you have to push yourself. But I think that's just a great way to outlook on life, where you can always do a little more and you need to get pushed over the edge. Otherwise, no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah. You know, as you were saying that, a line came to my mind is like, if you want to do shit that doesn't make sense, you have to get to the point where you stop thinking. So if you look at, like, if we take the fire in the building example, it's like, why were you able to just to like pick everyone up and like sprint out of the building? Because your situation put you at a point where like there was no thinking, there was no rational thought anymore. It was just instinct. It was just do. Even like with the things with Goggins of like, how did you finish the race and your like kneecaps are broken and you're exhausted? Like, how did you do it? Like, he's doing something that doesn't make sense, that is irrational. You have to get to the point where you stop thinking. Like your mind And it's actually funny. I find this even, I don't know if it's the same. I meditate, so maybe it kind of relates to that. But like, even with the thing of, it's a crowded room and someone asks, like, does anyone have any questions? I usually find that like, there's a point in your mind where you're like, fuck, like I'm gonna ask the question. And then there's a gap between when you make that decision and then when you actually put your hand up and ask the question. And I find in that gap, it's like there's nothing happening in your mind. It's like everything kind of has to get quiet, because if you're thinking too much about it, that shit ain't happening. When it's like very loud in your mind, you never do that. That's when you talk yourself out of it. You kind of need to be like, okay, fuck, I'm gonna go talk to the girl. And then it's like your legs just move. Your legs just need to move. They're like, there cannot be any rational thought. And that's the thing. You have to get to the point where you're not thinking anymore. I think also the other thing that you mentioned, it's like, it's such a nice process, I find, and it's very satisfying when something that caused you a lot of difficulty becomes something that you can do easily. Like that process is just really a beautiful process. And I wanted to ask you, kind of taking it back to like just your early steps in business and being an entrepreneur, what is something that at the beginning was just agonizing? It was difficult. It was so tough for you to do. But now you're like, this is my shit. Like I do this.
First thing is, every single day there's stuff I know I'm not good at. And it comes back to you're making it up as you go. First time fundraising, recruiting, doing marketing, doing sales, you're doing product. You've never really done it before. And that's why no one thinks they're ready to start anything, whether it's a tech startup, service business, podcast. No one's ready until you do it. You can read books and that's great. You can talk to people, but you're only going to learn by getting in the trenches. And inspiration isn't going to strike you like lightning, etc. You got to just go in there and do it. So first caveat is I'm trying to improve in all these things, learning from other folks, other people in the arena, people at stages you want to get to, people even at previous stages who are doing things that you wish you'd done too. I think the biggest thing, which this has been an adjustment, but when you start, you do everything. And something I take great pride in is just execution. I think the ability to, if it's on my plate, I'm going to do it. And I like that control. And in a startup, that's what you get. Like you have full skin in the game. It's on you if you do it or don't do it. But at a certain point, that becomes a major disservice because one, you are not the best person to do that. You just simply aren't. And then it comes down to how do you convince an incredibly talented person to come join this company or startup, which is most likely going to fail. Those are the odds. For any startup, it's going to fail. They could probably do something way less stressful with way more money too. And how do you convince that person to come join you on this crazy thing? And they are the person who should be doing this way better than you. So now I actually think, before I had this mindset of, I just need to do it. Like, how do I clone myself? If I could just have clones of me doing things, great, shit would get done. But it's not just about getting it done now. It's about having the right person who can do it way better than you. That's incredibly hard. I think recruiting is probably the most important thing. It's a thing I know I still don't spend enough time on, but end of the day, a company is people. People is what makes a company worth working at. It's what makes a company of 40-ish people defeat incumbents. It's David versus Goliath. And that switch from you can't do it all, it's a disservice to do it all, instead of working in the business, working on the business. If your hands are in everything, you're probably doing a half-assed mediocre job of it versus fully letting go and finding the right person to do it. And that's a hard transition. I'm trying to improve upon it, but then it's about what are you uniquely good at and what can you do well? And for me, things I've naturally enjoyed, my first legit job after, I guess, the snow shoveling thing, my first legit job in high school, this was the summer before I went to college, was I sold kitchen knives. Cutco, Vector Marketing, you maybe heard of it, maybe you haven't. It's this company that goes around and recruits people to sell these kitchen knives. I heard about it because another friend was selling them and he said, hey, like, you get a little commission if you join. Little Ponzi scheme-ish, but whatever. You get a commission if you join. That was part of their pitch I learned. But I was like, hey, I got a summer before college starts. Let's try this thing out. This is my first sales role. You go into onboarding. They give you this block of knives, and they teach you how to sell, and they say, okay, go sell. Start with your family. And this is where it gets a bit Ponzi scheme-ish because your family likes you. They support you. They're probably going to buy something. And when you start, the commission's very low too. So company or the parent company's making a lot of money. You're selling to your close network. My parents bought a set of knives. That was nice. That was nice of them. And then you start to go to your friends, and then friends of friends, etc. And what I realized quickly was this is fun. I don't know anything about knives, but it's like a new game. Every time you go in and you meet someone's house, you're literally coming into someone's house with a block of knives. And then you tell this story about how you have these scissors and a penny. And the pitch always started, let's say you're at a picnic and, your job was to get the cheese and crackers. Your job was to get the plates. Your job was to get the corkscrew. And the one person forgot the corkscrew. So you take these scissors and you cut a penny into a corkscrew and it saves the day. Oftentimes after that, they're like, I want the scissors. Give me the scissors. But after that, it's like, cool, you're selling knives. You have them bring out tomatoes. You slice it. Bring your knives out too.
Yeah.
That was really fun. And I realized sales I really like it. I thought it was fun. You learn to take no all the time. But instead of just taking a no, you're learning what could I have done differently. It's about building the connection. It's about trust. So sales is something which end of day, everything is sales. You're selling yourself to people, to customers, to investors, to your prospective or future partner, whoever it might be. It's all sales at the end of the day. That's something I found to like more. And hearing that no, actually, you just get used to it. You get braver, etc. But I know it's part of the process. The other thing too is marketing has gotten way more fun. I think in the past, marketing I used to think it's all about the product. Like if you build it, that's what matters most. But no, if you build it, people won't come. You have to put it out into the world. And I think especially recently, something you said I like too, unless you are doing it daily or you're really committing to it or all in, maybe it's a bit of a chore and you haven't built that identity yet. But when you flip that switch and say, for example, with content or podcasting, I don't know what your schedule is, but let's say it's like every week I'm going to find a host. Or for me, it's like every day I'm hitting publish on something.
Yeah.
Once you flip that mindset, it goes from being, oh, I have to do this to I get to do this. And then your mind just opens up to, ooh, that could be a potential host, or ooh, that could be a potential piece of content. And I think that framing is important too, because it just opens your mind up to different things and it makes it more likely you're going to continue with it too. So on the marketing side, once you start doing it, you get better at it. You realize, oh, here are some formats that work, or here's some styles that work specifically. You get braver as well. Your content does better. It starts to compound that as well. And that default flip of what you said is just so true, is people oftentimes want the identity before they put the work in. But I think an awesome hack for this is you ask yourself with health, what would a healthy person do? What would a boxer do? What would a bodybuilder do? And you ask that every day when you're making decisions, when you open the fridge. What would a boxer do? What would a bodybuilder do? Or when you're sitting writing content, what would Mr. Beast do? What would Joe Rogan do? And you put yourself in those shoes and ask yourself, then you start to make those right micro decisions. So I think of it as like stealing the identity of those people. Like, who's your role model? You steal it, use that as a way to make the decisions. Then eventually you become a fraction of that person, a little bit more, and a little bit more.
You know what's interesting? And I love that. And it's funny because I'll do that sometimes, but I didn't know that that's what I was doing. I think one thing I wrote in my notes, I was like, life is a lot actually about the questions that you ask yourself. Because sometimes you can ask yourself a question like, you're trying to become, I don't know, the best podcast in the world. And you're like, oh, what would, instead of trying to think through that and like what that means, there's a podcast in the UK, Diary of a CEO. Great podcast, marketing's phenomenal. And like maybe a micro question I'll come to myself with is like, oh, like how much should you be posting? Well, it's like, what does that guy do? Like it just makes it kind of simple. Like it cuts through the noise. It like it makes things objective, I think, because it removes you from the situation, and you're just like, oh, okay, this is what he does. Like it's just the truth. And I think what you I loved what you said even earlier, where you're like Michael Jordan just cared about the truth. He just wanted to know what it actually was. And I think the reason that that's so effective is that you're not distracted anymore. You're just focused, and you're not thinking about what are people going to think, or like just the noise that comes around whenever you trying to do something different. You're not thinking about the noise. You're just thinking, what is, not what could be, what might this person say, just what is. It's powerful when you get to that point. And I think it's interesting as well, because I would say in anything creative or anything different, you go through different stages of your mentality and like how you're thinking about it. And that's even what you speak to, right? Like when you're talking about once you start doing something and you fully commit, now your brain is coming up with creative ways to like that you can win, that you can like survive and thrive in this scenario. And I even wrote it on my Twitter today. And I actually don't know this. It's just a feeling that I have. I said, when someone gets to the point where all they're focused on is consistency, all they care about is just showing up every day and putting their time in, I feel like that's when you know they're like right on the precipice of like a big win. Because it's like they don't even care about the win. They're not even thinking about any result or what this person thinks or how they might be perceived. It's like they've truly committed themselves to the craft. Like one of my idols was Kobe Bryant, so I've watched like all of his interviews. And when you listen to this guy talk about basketball, and people will ask him about like his accomplishments and all these things, the guy doesn't care. He only cares about like his training regimen. I was putting up thousands of shots. I was hitting free throws, elbow jumpers, 3-point line, layups. I was waking up at 3 a.m. All he cared about was just clocking in. Like he just cared about the craft of being someone who was great. Like what if you wanted to be an elite basketball player, what would that person do? He did that. And so I don't know if that tweet will be validated, but that's just my sense. Is like when someone gets to that evolution in their mindset where they don't even care about like how many listens there. Well, it's not that you don't care, because everyone's gonna care to a certain degree, but they're not consumed by how many listens did my podcast get, how many likes did my tweet get. It's like, no, I start with just showing up and I'm putting in my time and I'm consistent and I'm there. And as long as I do that, it's a good day. And then we move on and like just mastering the craft. I want to get into like more of your story, because I think obviously you spoke about like doing the rotational program at Dropbox, moving to San Francisco, then leaving your job at Dropbox to do your own business. And it's always funny, and I do exactly the same thing. Things that you've done in the past, when you're like talking about it in hindsight, the way that you speak about it is like, oh yeah, I just moved to like San Francisco, just from Boston, but I just moved across the country, and then, I just started working at Dropbox and then just left my job, to do this business. And you like talk about it in a way that it was like, and I do the same thing. You're like, oh yeah, it's so casual. Like, yeah, I just did that. And then to the person listening, they're like, that's actually quite a big thing and like a brave thing to do. So talk to me about like even the mindset and like what were you even, and let's just go deeper with it. Like what were you even experiencing at that time when you're working at Dropbox? I don't know the exact context of the company, but like it's a company that's performing. San Francisco is like expensive as hell to live in. So there's like the realities of that. And you're like thinking through, okay, I want to do this business. Like what's even giving you the courage? What's giving you the conviction? Like just take me back to that moment and like what's happening in your life.
It really does start with and come back to, well, to where we are today, or where I am today, and we're all connected in some shape or form. I guess we even met before and didn't realize it too, which is wild.
Yeah.
But it all starts back with my family. And my parents are originally from India, born and raised there in Chennai, both doctors. And they grew up there, ended up deciding to move to England to start practicing medicine. When they were in England, that's when myself, I'm the oldest, my two younger brothers were born. Born in London, I lost the accent. You got the nice accent. I completely lost it. Grew up in Cardiff, Wales. I actually used to speak some Welsh too. That's gone as well. Grew up there. And when I was 6 years old, my parents decided to move to America and immigrate here. And when you're a kid, I remember like I have vague memories of being in Boston and watching cartoons like Clifford the Big Red Dog and stuff, but it's so surface level. It's like, oh, I'm going to a new school, or that's what you're thinking, or like the cartoons are like, who are these people around me? But what I learned in hindsight is my parents, I've now asked them, why did you do it? That's a huge decision. My parents are actually both doctors too. And when they moved here, I learned they had to redo their residencies. I don't know if you know residencies, but the residency is this process, or it's the training that you do, typically I think 3 to 7 years before you can actually be a doctor. They had to completely redo that when they came to America. I could go down this rabbit hole too. One of my favorite books is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Talks about the story behind the residency. Residency was started by this guy, John Stuart Halstead, or William Stuart Halstead. And 1889, John Hopkins, he was the director of surgery. He came up with the residency, and it was a way, quite literally, for people or doctors to live in the hospital to learn the craft and build knowledge. The secret came out years after that. He was a massive cocaine addict. So when he was creating the residency, he would do insane hours because he was on drugs. And the 30-hour residency, or 30 hours, wasn't 30 hours in a week. It was 30 hours nonstop. And point here is the residency today is because of really this crazy process back, or crazy way it started. The point being said, my parents completely redid that when they moved here. And I asked them why, and they said, it's because, cheesy as it sounds, cliche as it sounds, the American opportunity, American dream, opportunity for career prospects, the cultural mixing pot which lives in America, opportunity for my brothers and I, opportunity or access to entrepreneurship too, this whole gamut. And to me, and I know this is kind of long-winded, but it comes back to the question of, like, where do you get the courage? What drives you there? My parents sacrificed and did so much just for my brothers and I. To move here, they immigrated here. People like talk about immigrants and the American dream, but like I see that in my parents every day. They came here, restarted their careers, are now very successful doctors, showed me or instilled from day zero the importance of hard work, not being any shortcuts in life. And because of that, I feel insanely privileged to have the opportunities I have now. So the thing which goes through in my head, and this was back in college too, I remember going through the intern process for the first time, all these finance companies, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, coming to campus recruiting. And I actually had an offer to go work at Morgan Stanley. And at the time, you know, I was talking to some of my other friends, and they would be like, oh, like, that's a great offer, but now you have leverage. You should think about another offer too. And I'm like, whoa, you kidding me? Like, I got this job offer. It's like a well-paying job out of school. And I told my parents that, and I said, hey, like, I'm probably not going to accept it. I'm going to go look for other jobs. My mom was like, are you fucking crazy? Like, this company wants to pay you that much, and you're going to say no to that offer. And even that, I guess it's immigrant mindset, or whatever you want to call it. I just realized how fortunate I am, because of my parents and everything they did, to have the opportunities in front of myself. So for me, it then just comes back to, really, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to let others down who might have, or what would they crave, or what could they do if they were in the same situation? And that's a big driving force for me, where everything I have is because of what my parents did, and they're role models to me. But now I think, crap, life's too short. What can I do now that's the most high leverage thing? Given all the access, opportunity, people I have around me supporting me, it feels like a massive disservice if I just don't go for that thing. And even being at Dropbox, I got restless when they said, it's Dropbox or any other company. Just when I felt like I wasn't growing fast enough, Dropbox was incredible. They taught me everything. Wouldn't be where I am today without the people I met there. But I just felt, crap, is there more that I personally could be doing? And you're so right, though, between each step, I wasn't going to go sign at Dropbox. I had an offer to return. The day the offer was going to explode, the Dropbox recruiter was calling me back. And I told myself, if the Dropbox calls and the answer is it's a no, I'm going to sign and go to finance. And I told myself the story in my head, like, I would go trade, I'll do these things. If Dropbox says yes, I'll go. Literally, that was how I was going to decide, because I was like, I don't want to go recruit, I'm too scared. That happened. Then, okay, now I'm in San Francisco. But before I even went there, there was like some other job offers which came up. And I have this really good friend. I sat down with him. We made like a pros and cons analysis. I was very close to doing that too. So you're totally right. You blow through like each of these steps, but at every stage, it comes back to like scheduling the podcast and going back and editing it, or scheduling the Twitter thread. But it comes back to, I guess this is full circle to the company we're building now, Dula. I actually, and this might be a bit weird or extreme, but we help a lot of founders from around the world launch a US business. Majority international, but US customers too. And the crazy thing, which I think, is that, in my head at least, I think that all of these people starting businesses, I kind of see my parents or family in them. Like, people taking this risk, starting a business, maybe they're in the exact same spot. Like, they're starting this business and you have no clue how it's impacting their kids or the people around them or their customers. And to me, that's why it physically hurts me when I see a bad review come in, or I see a customer have a poor process. Because to me, it's a bit personal. I see my family and their experience in it. And at a certain point, you just have to get used to it. But I hate saying that too, because like a crappy experience for someone, you have no clue what they're risking, what they're putting on the line, and the impact that you can have. So even if it's thousands of businesses formed, thousands of co-founders with those businesses, thousands of customers, thousands of vendors working with those customers, families of those customers. And when you think of that, it's like, holy crap, that's huge impact. And that's what excites me too. I think end of day, I want to have the biggest impact possible. Who knows like what legacy you'll have in those things? That's so far out. But day in, day out, if you're enjoying or trusting the process, if you will, and the craft and realizing, yeah, you get to change someone's life. And even if we pause today, we've changed the life of many people. Like what else would I be doing or could I be doing there? And if I don't feel that, then sure. But to me, that's like the biggest driving force is you get to have this huge impact on the world. And I will say, to come back to something you said, I think a lot of people out there, the spotlight effect, don't actually care or think about what you're doing. But what I've realized is that out of the blue, you'll stumble into someone and they'll say, hey, by the way, that thing you posted or that thing you told me years ago changed my life, or I still think about it. And you're like, wait, what? I just tweeted that thing or said it. I wasn't even thinking about it, or it's a blog post you wrote. But then you realize the power of content you're putting out or like a thread I put out that could genuinely change someone's perspective. And that makes it more fun each day because you're like, wow, you're literally having an impact and changing the way people could go about their day-to-day lives as well. And then at that point, it's like overwhelming because it's like, cool, I guess this comes back to shoot your shot, put stuff out there. Otherwise, you're not going to have an opportunity to have an impact anywhere.
Yeah, no, that is so true. And it's funny as well because I think when you do step out and you make that decision and you fully commit, there's so much that comes with that. There's so much, and I'm not even just talking like financially or like in a very literal sense, like just mentally, like there's like stress that comes with that. There's like anxiety, there's self-doubt. There's moments where like your friends or your peers who did more of like a stable path are getting the rewards of taking more of the stable path, which is like, I don't know, maybe a more consistent salary, or like they go on like vacation, or they're starting to buy cars and like all of these things. And a lot of the times I feel like you're in your tunnel vision, so you don't even think about it. But there are moments, there's quiet moments where you're like, was I actually just fucking crazy? And so when that one, and it's funny because when that one person reaches out and they've watched your clip or they've listened to your episode, they've read your thread, and they pick out something specifically that you said and they tell you how it impacted them, makes all the shit worth it. Like in that moment, you're like, okay, like that's what it brings you back to center of like, that's why I was doing this shit. Like that's why, like we did the late nights and like the anxiety and like all that shit. One thing you said that I wanted to go back to, and it's something that I've reflected on as well, because my mum moved to America when I was like 10. Taking it even further, like in my family line, I think about how my grandma, like the only grandparent that I've known, like that she's been alive as I've been alive, she's from, and like our family's from Sierra Leone in Africa. And she had, I think, 4 or 5 children, and she decided to move with only my dad to the UK. And I think about like the bravery of that, of making that choice and then following through. And like she worked as a nurse for years, and she'll never talk really about like what that was like, or like even some of the things that she was putting up with, because I'm sure there was like racism and like there was like stuff that came with that decision. And I think about that, which is her making that one decision, it almost changed the whole trajectory of everything. The same with your parents, right? Like them making the decision to move here changes the trajectory of not only their lives, but because it changed their lives, it changes your life. And then you start to get to another point of gratitude where you're like fuck all the work that I'm doing and like the successes and wins that I had. I wouldn't even be in position if it wasn't for this decision that this one person had made. And it almost feels like a responsibility. Like you feel like, I need to make some shit happen. Like too much shit came together at the right time in the right moment for me to just be sitting here. But here's the thing I've realized. I think that's actually kind of a unique mindset. Like that's very much my mindset. I was like, the fact that I'm in this position, thinking of like where my grandma was, where we were even 2 generations previous in my family. It's like, I need to make some shit happen. Like this isn't even something that I want to do. Like this is my moment. Like this is what I was put here to do. It sounds from what you're saying, it's like you had like a similar thing where you were like, oh, like the stage has been set. Like I need to go for it. The same way that my parents went for it when they moved here. And it's funny because and I feel like you hear this story a lot with like immigrant parents. And like the school I went to was a lot of like very big like Asian culture. And every kid there was getting pushed to be like a doctor, a lawyer, engineer. And the reason those paths were being pushed is because they're secure, which is like, okay, I made this crazy decision to uproot my family and move across the world. And it was risky and it paid off. And now like when I'm talking to my children, like I want them to choose the secure path. Like I want them to choose the thing which is like, this is a safe bet. Like if you become a lawyer, if you become an engineer, if you become a doctor, you will get this salary. With a very high likelihood, there will be a demand for your skills at all times. And a lot of kids do they follow through on that vision. But every now and then you have a few who like, they just tear up the script. And it's funny. I was listening to the comedian Drewski, and he was talking. Funny, yeah, he's good, hilarious. And he was talking about when he dropped out of college to like do skits and become a comedian. And he was talking about how like his grandma and his mom was like furious because they're like they were accomplished, like they worked in like a serious field, like they were educated. And it's like, wait, like you don't understand. Like we put all this work in so that you could live like a secure life and go to college and then get a job and like follow this path that we had laid out. And he's like, nah, I'm going to do the skits on Instagram. And you know what's interesting to me, and I just want to get your sense on it, is like, what is the mindset of that rare individual that rather than being like, my family has literally mapped out this path for me that is going to work. Like I'm going to get a good life if I follow this path. But no, like fuck all of that. I'm going to start the business that no one really thinks is like, no one sees me as like the entrepreneur. Like I'm not Steve Jobs. Like no one thinks that I'm going to be like some massive success. Or like in Drewski's case, like no one thinks I'm going to be like a millionaire off being a comedian, and not even being a comedian, like just doing skits on Instagram. I just want to know the mindset of that individual that's like, rather than doubling down on what was safe and what's secure, I'm gonna do something completely different. I'm gonna do my thing. What do you think did that for you?
I don't know. And I think you're totally right. Not everyone is wired this way, but I don't think, I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe for you, like, when you were younger, were you wired that way? Or is it something you've grown like a muscle too? That I don't know. For myself too, I think actually for sure, I've seen it. I was literally about to not take this tech job if the offer didn't come in. And this was in the fall of my senior year. I could have spent the rest of the entire year recruiting, but I just told myself it's too risky, etc. So I do think the mindset of, is it being more risk seeking, being less okay with the stable path? I think that's something you get better at. And then in the future, you're willing to take more of those bets. But yeah, I don't know how much of it is nature versus nurture, what you're born with. But what I do think is, especially now, you're right. Not everyone has the mindset, but you can tell when some people do. I think you have it too, but you can tell me if you agree with this or not. Something I say all the time. My friends actually make fun of me for it now, but they're like, no, he's serious when he says it. Moderation is the only thing worth doing in moderation. Might sound like an incredibly hot take, might sound stupid, but the less blunt way of putting that is anything worthwhile is worth doing in excess. Anything worthwhile. And that means not just hedging or doing it, but like really immersing yourself into it. And it comes back to when you do that, that's intimidating for yourself and others, etc. But I think for me, especially now, it's moderation doesn't excite me as much anymore, because if I'm going to spend my valuable time on it in a given 24 hours, 8 hours of sleep, an hour of exercise, work, what are you working on? Okay, so like let's choose that. Then friends, family, etc.
Mm.
So really the only time you have is the time you're spending work on. And that's most of your life. It's like a third of your life. What are you going to work on? And then in that time, if you're really going to be moderate about something, it means you're doing a couple things, which is completely fine. I think balance is good there, but then you're not really going deep on something too. So now I've just realized about myself, this goes into people I find myself I'm attracted to as well. Not really a fan of the moderation. Like I found I'm really attracted to the extremes. Like when I'm hearing someone describe someone, they say like, oh, this person's like extreme, or they're obsessed, or they're crazy, they're not normal. I'm like, oh, I want to meet that person. I want to meet that person.
Yeah.
My fear, honestly, is oftentimes when I meet someone or when someone's explaining someone else to me and they're like, oh yeah, they're just normal. I'm like, I don't really want to meet. If they're just normal, if that's all someone can say about you, you haven't really cut through the noise, or you haven't, I don't know, not that there's anything negative against you, but I would actually rather have someone have something slightly negative about me. I push them the wrong way than no opinion of me. Obviously, I'd prefer people like me, but you're going to stir people. You can't make everyone happy. Absolutely cannot. My overall thought here is I think one, it's a mindset, or it's a muscle, again, that you develop over time. But now it comes back to very much, if I'm going to do something for better or for worse, if I think it's worth doing, I'm going to really go into it. It's why, I literally signed up. I've never done this before. I have a coach, like this bodybuilding show. It's on the calendar in October. Never done it, but it's happening. Like I'm all in on that. It's going. I told people I'm doing it. Yeah, it's going to happen. The ship's sailing. Yeah. A lot of these content challenges too. It's like, I'm going to do this for the next 30 days and we're going to double, and let's go see if we can do it. Here's the strategy. Time to go do it. But end of day, I think it comes down to, would I rather, what type of day-to-day life do you want to have? Do you want to push your boundaries? Do you want to see what you're capable of? Or just kind of stumble around? And not that it's a negative, but the thing that eats at me is I don't want to just stumble around and think about what if or what could have been. And it comes back to everything my parents did and the position I'm in. To me, and I guess you're right, not everyone thinks this way, but like, what's the alternative? They're not just going hard and saying, I have to make something happen. I really think a similar way too. And if you have to make something happen, the only way to do it is to go all in on it as well. But then I think it comes back to an advantage I feel like I have is a lot of this stuff does not feel like work. Like I'm thinking about it. I look forward to the weekend when there's no meetings and I can go in to my laptop in the office and like unstructured time, play some music, and just like, I call it work, but it's not. It's like I want to do it. I'm looking forward to it. And that's an advantage. If you, and I'm guessing you enjoy these podcasts and doing the prep and thinking about it, you're going to crush whoever's out there. Not that it's a zero-sum game. That's what's beautiful about all of this too. But someone else who's like, this is a chore, I have to go do it. They're not going to make it once the motivation wears off. But for you, it's like you enjoy the craft. You love the process. And this reminds me of what you were saying earlier on Kobe. I think you'll love this. Michael Jordan, he said he would rather miss a game than miss practice. Practice was the most important thing. Practice, the process. The games are just like the cherry on top. You do those, but everything that happens in the game is during practice. And it comes back to all these elite performers and anything. You have to enjoy the process. You're not, any goal that you set, we're in a very comfortable room here. We have water, there's perfect temperature, lighting's good and everything. But once you're in the trenches, it's not like that. And the only way you persist is, I guess, some motivation, or you have your story, you know your why. But other than that, it's the process. And now I look forward to, people say for any writer or creator, the biggest fear is the blank canvas. Here's the empty dock and just starting. So like some great writers I've heard, part of their process is they'll go sit in a room and they can't leave the room. They either write or they just sit there, but they have to force themselves in every single time. And then even at the gym, there's days when you absolutely don't want to go, but now I look forward to, oh yeah, I'm going to go in, it's going to feel sore the next day, and I don't really want to do this, or I'm tired, but I know, and it comes back to what you said, every day if you just show up and do that, you care about the results, but I do believe that most people give up way too early because we always expect it to be linear. And I think if output was linear based on what you put in, everyone in the world would be podcaster, creator, incredible shape, like world-class athlete, because you do something and you'd see the results. But the truth is it's flat, 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 maybe even down, flat, flat, flat. And then all of a sudden you see that inflection point for anything, whether it's you go to the gym, you look exactly the same. 2 days, you look exactly the same. But then we all have that moment, any sport, where you like look in the mirror and you're like, whoa, I'm actually good at this now, or I look better. Or you're doing podcasts week after week after week, or content. And one day you're like, whoa, before no one would engage. Now like you get 100 likes or 1,000 views or 10,000 views or comments on every post. And you don't know that exact moment, but day after day you showed up, you showed up, you showed up. You're iterating, but you trust the process and you know it's going to happen eventually. And that's like a really fun but scary, it's a scary moment to get to, or scary moment to anticipate. But once you get there, it's like, I guess with your mindset too, and the way I think about it is like, there's no pressing pause. Now it's like, now you're thinking to the next thing, and you know it's going to be a grind to get there too. But you've gone through it once and you're like, I'm ready. I know what the process is. Just have to show up each day.
Yeah. You know, I really, I do like that Jordan quote. I've never heard that one before. Which is rare because I listen to like all this shit. I've never heard that one. But it's, I have a theory on why, and it speaks to what you were saying as well. But I have a theory on why you would say that, even from my own experience. It's because like, when I left my job to do this full time and also to try and build like a media business, I didn't sign up. What I was committing to and what I was signing up for wasn't to be a successful podcast. That wasn't what I was signing up for. I think for Jordan, when he's like, when you sign the contract with the Bulls, or you go to college at UNC and you're like, I'm going to be a college basketball player, and you make that commitment, he wasn't signing up to be Michael Jordan and like everything that comes with that, and being like, people think he's the greatest player to ever play, and he's won like the most scoring titles and averaging 30 points. Like you can't guarantee that. You do not sign up for that. What you do sign up for is, I'm going to show up every day or every week or whatever the cadence is, and I'm just going to do the thing. And when I said like, I was having a conversation with my dad about this, because he was saying, maybe do you want to post like a bit less often, but you would be able to spend more time on the marketing, or get to know the guest even more, and give the audience more time to digest the conversations and all of this. And I was like, I listened, and I was like, no. I was like, I didn't commit to that. I committed to every week, Monday, 8 a.m., episode comes out. That's what I committed to. I don't know if the next one I post could go viral, get 1 million listens. It could get 1 listen. But I committed to that. And it's the same thing. That's my theory. I'm assuming it's the same thing for Jordan, where it's like, I didn't commit to being Michael Jordan. I just committed to, or being the GOAT of basketball. But practice 7 a.m. like every day, or whatever time it was for him, I committed to that shit. Like, that is what I'm showing up for. And when you just reach that place mentally where all you care is about like just showing up, man, it just, I don't know, it becomes personal. It becomes like everything is about, I just show up. That is my thing. Here's where I want to go. Because you talk about obsession, about liking the extremes. And it's like the motivation of it, the impact of it. And it is a feeling, like it's an empowering feeling just to go all in on something. But there's another side to it. There's a cost to it. And so I just want to know from your perspective, what has been the cost of being so all in, of being so obsessed, of being so intense, of going into the office on the weekends, and still putting it in and showing up every time? What has been the cost of that?
Very tangibly, it can rub a lot of people the wrong way. Not everyone, nothing against what other people think, etc. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with the type of life where anyone wants to have. We're all here one time on Earth, and I don't know, end of the day, like if you really zoom out, we're all just like little specks or creatures. Maybe we're like separate rabbit hole. Is it a simulation? Or like, are we a little test tube or vial? Whatever it might be. But end of the day, like we're here for ideally, I mean, I told people I want to live till I'm 120, but like ideally it's like 80 to 120 years, whatever it might be. We're here and then you're kind of gone. And then it can be a bit morbid, but that's all going to happen to all of us. It can rub people the wrong way for sure. And whether that's because it's intimidating or it leads to people's other anxiety, or it's because, hey, people just have a different outlook on what they want to do, etc. That's one thing for sure. I think the second thing, though, is I very much don't do a lot of things which maybe the average person does. I'll give you some like very concrete examples. At this point, people know I just don't watch TV. Like White Lotus, what's that? Like a flower? Like New Girl, I saw my first episode a month ago. Yeah. I don't watch TV. People think it's a bit absurd, but now it's like a joke. Like people say Arjun doesn't watch TV. Very much like a trade-off consciously I've made. It said, okay, I guess like it's not that I won't sit down and watch, but yeah, I just stopped watching series. Like I think The Office is hilarious, but like I'll watch a clip on YouTube. So like I don't watch TV. I definitely maybe in the past would go to just certain types of like maybe pure networking type events. Now I just like I still think it's critical to go to. You have to go, like you never know if you can meet someone there, but I probably go to less of them or I'm more selective, where it has to be really like, is it really worth going there, or like versus the trade-off of like the thing I've committed to saying no to that thing. But I can't say no to it now. Like, I think you've probably seen that same Kobe video. I think it's a Kobe video where he says, once I've committed to this, it's happening. Like you'll want to renegotiate with yourself, but hell no, I signed up for that. Like you're going in, like you said you're going to go to the gym every day, or you're going to ship every Monday at 8 a.m. Nope, no renegotiating the process or renegotiating with yourself. I saw that exact same video and I loved it too. So like I don't watch TV. I probably just go to less events, etc. Now the way I think about things is I like being fresh, like my brain fresh on the weekends now. So now it's like you fully work back. It's like, okay, I'll still go out, like friends doing things, etc. But now it's like I want to be fully fresh the next day, which means the only way that's going to happen is if I get to sleep at a reasonable time. To get to sleep at a reasonable time, like what am I eating or drinking before? What am I even doing before? And then you keep working back. It's like, okay, there's probably a whole web or spectrum of things I'm not going to be doing because I want to be fresh then. And it's not every weekend for sure, every single night. But I think you just really have to pick and choose a few things. And maybe this is where, I know I did say, I think moderation is the only thing worth doing in moderation, but that doesn't mean you can never have a late night out or I don't work every single weekend, but even calling it work is the wrong thing to me because it doesn't feel like work. It's like I crave that empty time when I can just think and, write without any interruptions or anything there too. But yeah, I think this is what I also just think too, is can anyone or everyone find that stage? Maybe it's because they haven't found the thing which they're truly drawn to. But shit, then it comes back to, I don't know if you've read Cal Newport's book, Good to Great. I think it's called Good to Great. But he talks about the passion fallacy, where you should not follow your passion. You should just do what you're good at. And, something which you're passionate about might not be a good job. But then I also firmly believe that when you do something and commit to it and get better at it, you start to like it because you're good at it. So I do think like oftentimes you get passionate about the thing you're working on, consistent with and getting better on, versus like when I was born, I didn't think about forming companies at all. Like that would be absolute BS. I could say like, oh yeah, when I was an early age, like I read a book about, my dad left his laptop open. I saw like some legal docs and I got fascinated about LLC formation. That's bullshit. I didn't know anything about it. But the thing is like you realize, like you like different puzzles. You like naively thinking you can take this complex process, which is full of paperwork, and automating it. And then now I'm obsessed with LLCs. My Twitter name has Mr. LLC in it. Like I feel like I'm in the 1% of people who know LLCs. I know now in my head, I know different state filing fees by state. I joke in my next life, I could be an international CPA. I know 1040 filings for single member US residents versus Form 5470 for non-US. All those things, which now I think are very fascinating, but I was not passionate about that. That came from holy crap, there are millions of people in the world that want to potentially form a business.
Mm.
You realize you can help them form a business. You realize content can help them learn how to form that business. You're like, I want to learn more about this stuff now. I want to go find the top blogs on this content. I want to listen to the top podcasts on entrepreneurship too.
Mm.
So yeah, I guess it comes back to like there's trade-offs in absolutely everything, but the most valuable thing I found, I first heard about this from Jeff Bezos, is the regret minimization. Is as much as possible looking forward when you're 80 or on your deathbed thinking, which one would I have rather done? And when you think of it that way, it actually makes a lot of decisions easier in the moment. And I think he says when he looks back, ask yourself, would you rather live a life of ease and comfort or service and adventure? He said I would choose the latter 10 times out of 10. I think for me, like, yes, it's more risky. And yes, I'm incredibly privileged and blessed to be in this opportunity, given what everything and everyone has done before me, especially my parents, and the web goes on, things their parents did, etc. But it comes back to, and I think you have a similar mindset. Crap, like, what is the other option other than just fully trying to have the biggest impact and going all in on something?
Yeah. No, that's powerful. That's powerful. Here's where I want to end. We started off, we were speaking about asymmetric opportunity, the power of that, the rewards that could come from that. And we were talking about, like, why are people not doing it? And it was a nuanced conversation. Like, we there's a lot of different reasons to why that stops all of us from taking all the opportunities that we should. But if you really got down to it, a lot of it is fear. Fear, it's just a powerful emotion. And we all feel it. And there's always, and for every single human that's ever existed, there's things that they wish they would have done, but they didn't do it because there was fear, or there was doubt, or there was anxiety. At the point you're at now, your content is like, it's like taking off. Like, you're getting really good traction. I also just think you have the personality for content. Like, it's engaging. Like, it's gonna hook people. Your business, you have a good idea. You have good backing on it. Like, things are working. But there's always fear. There's always self-doubt. At this point you're at now, what are some of the things that today, on Thursday, 23rd of March, what creates the doubt for you? What are the things that that in those quiet moments you're like kind of scary? Like, it's like, oh, if that happened, like, fuck. Like, that would hit me kind of differently if that took place. What's the fear for you right now?
I think you said it earlier, which is 100% everyone questions, what if I had done a different path? I noticed the same things too. People doing other things at different stages, buying houses, having kids, getting married, traveling to different parts of the world, whatever it might be. And across the board, everyone's at different stages, older than you, younger than you. They're doing many different types of things. And that's definitely a question which always pops up, like, crap, why choose this versus doing something else? What if? And your brain starts to go down that route. I think the other thing is that things are starting to work, but what does that truly mean? End of day, the only validation, at least for a business, is revenue and extremely happy customers. Thankfully, we have that, but we also have threats to revenue, threats of revenue slowing, pissed off customers who are not happy with their experience too. So while 100% very glad, ecstatic we're in this position right now, I know it can all disappear very quickly. And this is where it doesn't just apply to startups. I actually think that in any creative process, whether it's a business, content, podcasting, there is no treading water. You're either going forward or you're moving backwards. You cannot be treading in place. It's like quicksand, or you're coming out of the sand. And I think in this case here, for the business, a lot of things are working. We can feel the signs, but we also know if we don't nail execution, someone else is going to come do this thing. or someone else is going to take the opportunity we've identified and do it. And timing is so key too. In any venture, any business, podcasting, content, timing's critical. Do you have the zeitgeist around you? Are people looking for something like this at this time? The idea, whether it's a message you're putting out or a product or service you're putting out too. So the fears are, look, someone else can and will do this if we don't. And I think the bigger fear, and again, this is where we're blessed to be in this position, is we feel like for our business, it's now a matter of pure execution. Before it was about, can we assemble not a massive team, but the right team of people who can really help us do this? Can we assemble the right backing? Can we validate that there's a need in the market? Can you demonstrate initial strongholds or signs that the message you put out resonates? And maybe you see signs, whether it's followers or engagement, etc. Now at this point, there's a lot of things which are working. Maybe not at the level we quite want yet, but now the game has flipped and I think comes back to this idea that hard work is extremely risky. At this point, if things were to fail, and look, let's be super real. For any creative process or business, the odds are failure. That's the odds. If they were to fail, it means we didn't execute well, which is scary because it's like there's no pointing the finger except right back to you. But at the same time, isn't that where we want it to be? Like, holy crap, we're at a point where it's balls in our court. So that to me is what really drives me. It's like, oh my God, if I didn't do this thing, or even just thinking like, did I really spend my time correctly this week? Because every single second or 10-minute block is so precious at this point. And I know it won't disappear overnight, but it's more looking back, you'll realize, crap, we let that fall through our fingers. And that at this point is probably different than what I felt a year or two ago, where it's like, this is just so new that there's so many things that we need to go in our favor. And then even going forward, you're going to need more luck as well. But it's sort of switched to a game of less chance, more execution. And while the odds are failure, I think, just percentage wise, you're not doing the podcast because as you said earlier, like the odds are low for all of these creative ventures. But I think it's a defeatist mindset to think that you can't shape your own future or like make it a success too. And that comes back to when you go out into the world with this, I'm going to go all on this thing and do it. I genuinely believe you can like shape what's around you. And it's kind of wacky, wishy-washy, but the example I have for this where I proved it, or proved it to myself at least, and you can do this over and over again, is for our business in Wyoming, the summer of 2021, they launched or passed this legislation where DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, can register as an LLC. It was brand new. Some people thought it was just some like wacko marketing from Wyoming, but new entity type existed in Wyoming. Web3 was starting to become bigger. We had this offering for LLCs where we formed them, EIN, registered agent, bank account, taxes. And I thought, wait a second, why can't we serve this new offering, this new entity type? Did some research myself. We met this partner who was launching in the same space, put together a launch in January. We put together the launch in January, went to market, brand new offering. They had just announced that you could form these entities. And then I announced that day, okay, I'm going to do for the next 66 days, I'm going to put a thread out every single day on Twitter, which I repurposed on LinkedIn about DAOs. I was like, we need to do something a little crazy or wacky. Let's try this. And every day I did it. I said, I committed to it. I'm not going to miss a single day. There were some days I didn't batch the content. So I came in and like, shit, I got to hit publish before midnight, etc. But what happened is we came out with a bang. It put us on the radar. Some of the threads were flops. Some threads caught people's eyeballs. Fast forward to today, 35% of all DAO LLCs created have been formed with Doula. We're the leader in terms of market share. Companies or people know, hey, if you want to form a DAO LLC, you go to Doula. Craziest thing though, and I haven't told too many people this, the first blog post that we wrote, which is now, if you Google DAO LLC, #1 organic search result, it actually outranks the state of Wyoming. I wrote the first draft, and we actually worked with someone on Fiverr to like help edit it. It's the #1 blog post on Google organically. We're not spending a dime, or we spend, I guess, a little on paid there, but to me, it was like, holy crap. All it took was thinking strategically about a launch, being consistent with a little crazy viral, tweet LinkedIn combo, and then putting out some content. And now literally in the world today, there's this new offering that told me like, holy crap, I think you can do anything. Like to me, and it's wild. You can't truly do anything. Like I'm not gonna be able to fly, but it just told me, shit, if you put enough effort into something and truly show up each day, who's gonna stop you? Like you can kind of make the world bend around you. And that to me is like just another sign that, hey, with the business or with content, etc., I know if I put the time in and show up each day, or even with my health, if I just show up each day, it's going to happen. And is it scary? Yeah. You're going to question along the way, or I question all the time, like, should I really be doing this? Like, is it a bit too extreme, etc.? But then, yeah, it comes back to fear of, I think a lot of it's the fear of failure. But I think fear is also like, oftentimes I find what I'm fearing is what I just need to go do. It's like a form of self-protection there. And Tim Ferriss has this great fear setting exercise where he does it once a month or something, where he takes his fears and writes down what's literally the worst thing that could happen. And are you going to die? No. Are you going to like lose all your money? No. Is someone going to maybe say something like, hey, that was weird? Yes. And is that the worst case outcome? Okay, like you've deconstructed it, and that's really the worst thing. Or even like when you're scared to message someone, or go a cold approach, go talk to someone, whoever it might be, like tap on their shoulder or send an email. Literally the worst thing that could happen to any of those is you die. You die, or like, I don't know, something in any human interaction, and that's usually not going to happen. Like when you think about that, it's like, okay, there's only just a bit of embarrassment which you'll feel, or you send the message and no one reads it. And then when you deconstruct it that way, it's like, why not do it? Shoot your shot and go do the thing.
Shoot your shot. I love ending on that. Cool. It's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a ton, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, a lot of fun. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel. We're having fire conversations every week on the podcast. Before we end the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Free Agency. What if I told you there is a good chance you're leaving money on the table in your career? It would kind of annoy you a bit, right? Well, Free Agency aims to stop that. They represent and manage talent in the tech industry. Here's how they do it. First, they provide you with a dedicated talent agent. Think about this as your career quarterback. They understand you and your career goals. Based on that understanding, they bring you suitable interviews at top firms. You focus on smashing the interview, and together with their network, research, negotiation expertise, they will make sure you get a top of market salary. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency.